to the Scholar Days. We're so happy that you guys are here braving the cold, snowy weather. It's my honor to introduce Dr. Tim Armstrong and his students.
Dwane's going to talk about some research that we did this past summer. It's a second year, really, of a kind of continuing monitoring program. Small mammals up on the Baca National Wildlife Refuge. So I'll let Dwane go ahead and talk to you about what we've been working on.
All right. Hi. I know some of you, but I'm Dewane, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about, well, my God, there we go, small mammal trapping. And the project we did was assessing habitat requirements and spatial distribution of small mammal populations on the Baca National Wildlife Refuge. And it's kind of a joint venture between Adams State and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Okay, so my outline is, first I'm going to talk to you guys about the importance of small mammals, the study site, which was the Baca National Wildlife Refuge, and our project goals, and our methods, results, and conclusions. Then I'm going to finish up with some ideas that I had about future research. So what are small mammals? Well, obviously they're mammals, but what we're talking about here are rodents, cercomorphs, which are moles and shrews, and lagomorphs, which are rabbits and hares. And there's others, but I'm not going into all those just for the sake of brevity here. So this study focuses mostly on rodents because they're most susceptible to trapping, and they're also the most diverse group of small mammals. So here we have a northern grasshopper mouse, and this guy's a carnivore. We have an orange kangaroo rat, and he's a granivore or a seed eater. And then we have a couple of generalists, and a least chipmunk and a deer mouse, and these guys are they just eat whatever, but mostly vegetative matter. So why should we care about small mammal populations? It's because they occupy a really pivotal point in the food web. So they're the lowest trophic level vertebrate consumers, and they have a big influence on plant communities because they burrow, they stash seeds, they move seeds. So without the small mammals, the plant communities suffer also. And they're also, one of the big things is they're a resource for higher trophic level predators. And if you don't have small mammals, you don't have things like coyotes, hawks, snakes. They're all dependent on the small mammals for food. And these are some representative species that are dependent on small mammals for food here in the valley. In case you can't see him, there's a coyote there. Pretty cool. So the Baca National Wildlife Refuge is where we did our project. And this thing's almost 80,000 acres. And it was established in 2000 as part of the Great Sand Dunes Authorization. So the same legislation that changed the national monument into the national park, there was money included so that they could purchase this big piece of land. So the Baca was established to protect a unique combination of habitats, including wet meadows, upland shrub habitats, and riparian corridors. And the important thing to think about when you see the Baca, if you've ever been up there, it's right up by Crestone up there, is this place has never been developed. So it closely resembles what the valley probably looked like 200 years ago before European Americans came here. All right, so our goals in this trapping project are to determine species composition, habitat requirements, and spatial distribution. And the impacts of anthropogenic activities also play a lot into this. It's probably the one thing that we can control out there is what we're doing to the land, whether we're haying these big fields or we're grazing a lot of cattle on there. So that's something I'm focusing on here. And all this is basically is being recorded so that we can have a baseline to see what impacts we're having through our management practices, and so that we can make informed management decisions when we need to do something up there. So another thing that we needed to we focused on was small mammal handling, so that we could minimize the risk to people handling animals. So there are diseases like hantavirus, hemorrhagic fevers that these animals carry. So we always had to be very careful when we were handling them to use gloves, protective equipment, and make sure we decontaminated equipment when we trapped, say, a deer mouse, which carries the hantavirus. We segregated those traps, decontaminated them so that we weren't spreading the disease or making anybody sick with it. So how did we collect the data? It was non-lethal trapping, and we did this on random plots selected for the different habitat types, and we kind of had to tailor it to each individual terrain type. Our preferred method was the radial web method because it's useful in establishing densities of animals, but we also used grid and linear transects. So this is the radial web trapping method, and in this, each one of these transects was 45 meters long, traps spaced at 3 meters apiece, so 15 traps, 23.5 degrees between transects, so 16 of them equal 360 degrees. So, and this is us out setting one in the evening. All of our trapping was done at night, so we'd set the traps in the evening, and then we'd go check traps in the morning and process animals. So our trapping methods, we use Sherman live traps, which this Sherman live trap is a trap door right here, a trigger back in here, so the animal goes in, triggers the trap, and this is a humane and safe way to trap the animals without harming them. So, and as bait, we used rolled oats and peanut butter mixture, which it took a little bit of experimenting to get to that, but we found that that's really effective in attracting our target small mammals. So we also included bedding material because these guys are small and they lose heat really fast when they're caged up in a little metal box. So bedding material just so they can stay comfortable overnight until we come and process them and let them go again. So our Mark-Recapture method was 3 consecutive nights. First and second nights, mark and record all captures. And on the third night, we would just record and release. So all these captures were recorded on pre-made forms by location and species so that we could analyze the data later. And after recording, we always tried to move the animal back to exactly the area where we caught it so that it didn't cause it any undue stress. So here's a little silky pocket mouse, only one we caught. So, and this is how we had to mark this guy because he's really small and he wouldn't take one of those ear tags that were, so, and larger species like this orange kangaroo rat, we ear tagged these guys. So, and all those ear tags have distinct numbers on them, so you can tell one individual from the other. So our results, okay, so we categorized our results according to the habitat type. And so we had an upland shrub habitat type, which was dominated by greasewood and rabbit brush, kind of like a lot of the valley. But the important thing to note is that there was low levels of domestic grazing. There was a lot of native ungulate grazing going on there, but it wasn't some place they were turning the cows out. So, and dry meadow, it's a seasonally wet dry meadow. So this had higher levels of domestic livestock grazing. I think they graze it, what they call intensive graze it once a year. And it was dominated by grasses, mostly Baltic rush. And then we had a riparian corridor habitat, which is, it's highly diverse. There was everything from probably buffalo grass, real low growing grass, all the way up to huge cottonwood trees and everything in between. So, all right, so this is the the upland shrub habitat, and Dr. Armstrong. So, and this is the dry meadow habitat. As you can see, it's kind of just a big monoculture of one type of grass. And we had this riparian corridor area, and this was very lush, and there's everything from rank vegetation, you know, from years past, all the way up to willows and cottonwoods here. So these are our numbers that we found, separated into categories by what habitat type. And what we did with these is that we used diversity indexes to quantify the evenness, or the richness and evenness of each habitat type. And we used, I used 3 different indexes: the evenness, Shannon's diversity index, and the Simpson's diversity index. And all of these have, the important thing to note on this, because I'm not going to go into the math here, but all of these have values between 0 and 1, with 1 representing high diversity and 0 representing no diversity. So on this upland shrub habitat, we had a species richness, which is the number of species present, of 4. And this, even though it's lower than this riparian corridor area had, which had a richness of 7, it displayed the most, or the highest numbers on the diversity indexes. And so just to kind of graphically represent that, or why that is, even though you had 7 species over here and 4 over there, the reason it scored better on the upland shrub scored better on the diversity, or higher on the diversity indexes, was that 73% of what we caught on that riparian corridor were deer mice. So that plays into the evenness of species composition. So I mean, it's good that all of these are present there, but each one just is a very small all the other species are a very small portion of what's represented there. So, and these guys were a lot more evenly distributed. So, all right, and then we have that dry meadow habitat. And there's your species diversity there. There's none. 1 species, probably because there's 1 species of grass there, and no cover or anything else for the for small animals, or for small mammals to no reason for them to be there really. So, and we also, on the 2 habitats where we did the radial web trapping method, we also estimated the density, and all these density numbers are in number of animals per hectare. And so, and that plays into how much biomass. So on the upland shrub habitat, there's a ton of small mammal biomass per hectare, which that's good for all those predators that we saw earlier. And then on this dry meadow habitat, there's a few deer mice there, and a really smart, or a hawk that can see really good. He might use that habitat to forage, but for the rest of the animals, it's probably, or predators, it's probably not a very good place to make a living hunting small mammals. So, all right. So some conclusions that I came up with is that these 3 different habitat types were all distinctly different in their small mammal composition, and their species richness, and their biomass even. So these differences are probably related to, partly to some, just natural factors, how much water's there, what plant species are present there, but they're also related to the anthropogenic disturbance, or that's the way I see it. That maintaining that big monoscape of grass for cattle grazing, it's not, while it's good for cattle, it's probably good for elk and some of the other native species. For small mammals, it's not very good for them. Or that's just my opinion on that. So some ideas that I had for future research, just kind of to maybe quantify my observations on especially on the grazing thing, would be trapping inside and outside of some exclosures so that we could make direct comparison between grazed and ungrazed tracts. And the Baca is actually a really good place to do this because they already have several large exclosures that are already there, and all it would take was our labor to go up there and trap inside and outside within the same vicinity to make some pretty good comparisons. And I'd like to also possibly add some additional techniques for species detection, such as scat surveys, owl pellet surveys, just to look for things that are not very susceptible to being trapped. Because we know there are shrews and voles there, but we didn't catch one of them. So it would be a good way to ensure that we are getting a good census of what's actually up there, or a good sample of what's actually there. And so at this point, I'm going to open up the floor to questions. All right. Thank you.
So that was a really informative presentation. Thank you. What are your plans for after you graduate Adams? What are you thinking about doing?
I think I need to get a job because I need money. But yeah, I actually have a job at the sand dunes this summer, and I have a couple of other job prospects. Hopefully, I'd like to stay in the valley and work with one of the federal, state, or local agencies doing wildlife related research. All right. Go ahead.
The corridor? What type of corridor is it?
Oh, okay. So the question is the riparian corridor. So it just means it's stream side. Riparian vegetation is stream side vegetation. So.
What kind of other food things did you try to get
Oh, I think we had a big sack of Coors barley, and they didn't seem to like it much at all. I think we caught almost nothing with it. I think that the oatmeal is okay, but I think it's really the peanut butter. If you've ever noticed, you can open up a can of peanut butter back there in the corner, and immediately everybody in the room smells it. So I think it's an attractive smell, and it's a smell that disperses well and attracts them from at least ranges, anything that peanut butter is there, anything within the smell range of that's probably attracted to it. So I think it smells like a seed, so only better. So
we were never sure if they didn't like the barley or there just wasn't anything there to eat the barley.
yeah,
It was
so
the first year we were out trying this, and we were kind of figuring out all our methods, and so we trapped several times and caught like 2 or 3 of those giant grids with 240 traps and caught one bull after several nights of effort, and so it was not a very good return on our effort.
yeah. All right.
So with 244 traps in, I guess it's a decent sized area, but not a huge area.
Yeah.
What % of the population are you catching each night? Do you have any idea?
According to those, I didn't do like a lot of math on that, but we're probably catching 80 or 90% of what's there on a night. So within that, because of that big radial web, we're catching a pretty high percentage. A lot of our, most of our recaptures, or most of our second and third night captures were recaptures. So it kind of tells you that you're catching almost everything that's there that's susceptible to trapping. So.
Particularly in the middle where, because as you come in toward the center, the density of the traps in there is really high, even though they were 5 meters apart, or 3 meters apart.
3 meters apart.
Every 9 or 10 feet, but that area was really dense. But like Dewane said, if you continue to trap 4 or 5 or 6 nights, you end up catching no new animals, then you've theoretically at least sampled every rodent within that area.
Yeah, I think on our third night, we were probably at least 90% recaps. So that pretty much means you're there. You've pretty much censused that small area anyway.
So did the rodent community complexity correlate directly with habitat complexity, would you say then?
Oh yeah, I would say the more diverse the plant community was, the more diverse the rodent community. Because especially on that riparian area, we had like I said, it wasn't very, on these diversity indexes, it didn't score very well, but on species richness, it was a good bit higher than everything else.
Almost double. Really.
Yeah. So. All right. Any more questions? All right, at this time I'd like to thank everybody for being here, and especially thank Dr. Armstrong for kind of guiding me through this process. It was a great learning experience for me, and this time I have my references or my literature cited, most of them. All right, thank you everybody.
Thanks.